I am here at Lake Forest Middle School. This is where it all began for me as far as my education journey as a teacher. I was a 7th and 8th grade middle school teacher here 23, almost 24 years ago. I was 42 years old when I first started, knew absolutely nothing about education. Because I went through all the college classes at 42 and I didn't go through the undergraduate classes for education. I didn't do a practicum, I didn't do an internship, I didn't get to do any student teaching. It was just like, here's your classroom, here's the curriculum, figure it out. Now, this is not the school that I taught at. This is new. Let me show you what the school looked like. Sort of, there's a couple of buildings here left, and I'll show you a little bit about what it looked like when I was here before. When I came to work here 23 years ago, this was a series of pods out across this parking lot. It was buildings like this behind me where there were 5 classrooms in a building, and there were 5 teachers. And so each building had a grade level. There was a math teacher, 2 English teachers, a science teacher, and a social studies teacher. So I was the English teacher that taught grammar, and then there was another English teacher that taught literature. I was always kind of jealous of that teacher because that was the fun job. At least that's what I thought. The buildings were not really designed for Cleveland, Tennessee. They had these roof lines that went up, and inside, those interior roofs were beautiful, beautiful woodwork, but you couldn't heat them in the wintertime and you couldn't cool them in the summertime. And so they put in lowered ceilings across there, covered all of that up. But it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun when I was teaching here. Another building that's left over is this building over here to my right. This was the cafeteria, and it's still standing. And all of this area back behind me, where is now parking lot, is where all of the school actually stood. And, you know, the buildings were just, they were falling apart. You couldn't really repair them. Richie Stevenson was the principal here when I started working, and he's still the principal here today. In fact, he's the longest serving principal in Bradley County history, I believe. And he did a really, really great job of keeping those buildings together as best he could. He did a lot of work through the summers, painting and repairing and things. But finally, the school board agreed to build a new school here. And it is just absolutely gorgeous. Now, I'm not here to tell you about Lake Forest Middle School, but I'm here to watch a football game. My grandson Liam has tried out for the football team, and they have a scrimmage tonight. I think he's decided maybe football's not cut out for him, but I'm here to support him anyway. And so we're going to do that. But I thought I would just take a minute to tell you that this was sort of like the first third of my education experience here at Lake Forest and in Bradley County. This is where I learned to be a teacher. I came in knowing absolutely nothing about classroom management, nothing about how to teach the curriculum, nothing about how to assess kids, nothing about state testing. I knew nothing. And I struggled during that first year. Richie Stevenson called me into his office at the end of that year for my summative evaluation, and he was quite kind, but he was also pretty direct. And he said, "Childers," he just always called me Childers. "Childers, I'm going to give you another year. But if you don't improve, there won't be a third." And I was like, okay, well, you know, that's a challenge. And I do like a challenge. So I spent that summer trying to figure out what the crap I was doing in the classroom. I got a little better in the second year. I got better enough to keep my job. And I got a little better the third year. But I'm not going to sit here and say I was ever really a good teacher. I was a fair teacher. I was an adequate teacher, but I was not a great teacher, and I will never be a great middle school teacher. Just not gonna happen. And as I mentioned, this was the first third of my educational experience. So my time in education, I really have sort of divided up into 3 sections. One was Lake Forest Middle School, where I learned to be a teacher. I learned what education was about. I learned about scheduling. I learned about how important it is to figure out where kids need to go and how to get them there and make the best use of teachers. And then it became very obvious, during my tenure here that I was never going to be an administrator in Bradley County. It just was not going to happen. And I was lucky enough to stumble upon a job at the L&N STEM Academy in Knoxville, Tennessee, where I got my first administrative position as an assistant principal. And there I spent about 6.5 years or so just enjoying the freedom of not having any kind of boundaries with what you do with education. We scheduled differently than every other school. We were the first one-to-one technology school in the district. It was all iPads for everybody. And I remember, we realized that the iPads weren't going to work for state testing, and that was going to be a problem. And, some other kinds of things down the road. We really needed a laptop rather than an iPad, as fun as the iPad was when they first came out. I think we were using the iPad 2, maybe, our first year. And we went to the technology department and we said, what we'd really like to get is Chromebooks. We'd like to get Chromebooks for everybody. They're cheap, they're inexpensive, they work great, they tie to the cloud. And the technology department said, listen, we will never allow Chromebooks to be used in this district ever. We will never allow it. They're too big of a security risk. We're not going to let them hook up to our internet. We don't like the web browser. We don't like this, that, and the other. And within 3 years, every school in the district had Chromebooks because that was the only way to keep it sustainable financially. That was my second part of education. And then the third part of my time in education came at Fulton High School. And at Fulton High School, I really learned what it meant to be an assistant principal. I learned what it meant to deal with kids who didn't have a great life outside of school and how to sort of try to work my way through. And I screwed it up the first year or two I was there. I'm not going to lie. I was awful at it. I had a great mentor in Misty Lingerfelt, who did a great job sort of leading me along. I had a great principal in Rob Spees to get me started. And the teachers just accepted me and welcomed me and made me feel like I actually was the best thing since sliced bread. And I can honestly say that probably the last years of my educational career at Fulton, probably the best years of my educational career. Do I miss it? Oh, heck no. No. I'm retired, man. I am done. Well, obviously there's not a whole lot to critique about this video. I had a little more that I would like to have done, but I just simply ran out of time. I got over there later than I meant to. I started to go into the little gray building in the video because that was a classroom at one point, but it's now a maintenance shed, and there were people inside, and I didn't want to walk through with a video camera on, so I didn't go in there. But yeah, going back to Lake Forest brings back lots of memories. So I'll leave it there, and I will see you all tomorrow with maybe something more interesting.